The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Amy Klickner, CEO of the Lake Superior Community Partnership. Welcome to today's webinar on the WorkShare program and response plans. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a few items so you know how to participate fully in today's event. You're listening and using the computer's speaker system by default. If you would prefer to join over the phone, just select telephone in the audio pane and the dial-in information will be displayed. You will have the opportunity to submit questions to today's presenters by typing in the questions pane of the control panel. You may send in your questions at any time during the presentations. We will collect them and address them at the end of the session. I would now like to introduce Carrie Dillon. Carrie is an unemployment insurance analyst for the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, or LEO. Carrie has served in unemployment insurance for 18 years. She started as a claims interviewer in 2002, then moved on to be a claims examiner. While in that role, she became involved with projects such as adjudication, unemployment insurance extensions, and fraud. Carrie was then promoted to an unemployment insurance analyst position in 2009, where she was part of a new program of MIDAS for the benefits and tax side of the agency. In her position today with the Office of Employer Ombudsman, she travels throughout the state giving presentations on unemployment insurance and is dedicated to making sure employers have a good understanding on unemployment insurance information. With Carrie today is Deneen Test, State Administrative Manager, Field Audit, Tax, and Employer Services with LEO. Today, Carrie will be speaking on the WorkShare program, and Deneen will be available to also answer questions at the end of the presentations. Thanks so much for being here, Carrie, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Amy. We will get started and talk today about WorkShare, program that the Unemployment Agency is promoting for the state of Michigan to help revamp our economy, to get us back up and rolling again so we can be a workforce state. Our webinar agenda includes today a WorkShare overview, how it works, eligibility requirements, the application process. We're going to certify a plan, terminate a plan, WorkShare, and the Paycheck Protection Program. We will also have some employer FAQs as well as employee FAQs, and then we'll have resources for you to contact us should you have additional information or questions. Next slide. Now here we have a WorkShare program restart retain a video that we have, which we're going to have to postpone until maybe the end where we can share the web link with that. Right now we're having a little bit technical difficulty with that. So with that in mind, we will share that. It's a very nice video that gives you a nice perception of how WorkShare program can work best for you and your business. Next slide. So WorkShare program, restart, retain. WorkShare is the state of Michigan's program that can help employers retain the employees, restart their business during disruptions in operations. It will allow employers to bring back or keep employees working with reduced hours while employees collect partial unemployment benefits to make up a portion of the lost wages. And WorkShare has traditionally been used by employers to retain their employees and avoid layoffs. Next slide. How does it work? So as Michigan gets ready to restart our economy, our employers are encouraged to use the program to bring their employees back from unemployment to restart their operations. So with the WorkShare program, an employee works fewer hours in a week and they'll still receive a reduced salary from the employer, but they're also given a percentage of the state UI benefits plus the additional $600 for the federal pandemic unemployment compensation. And that is all paid for through the Federal CARES Act through July 25th. Next slide. An employer, how does it work? An employer can bring back their employees at a reduced rate, and the employees can even receive more money than they would during a normal work hours. More importantly, they would receive more money than they would if they remained on standard unemployment. And so this will allow the employer to start up the business at a reduced capacity while their employees still earn high wages and receive still the unemployment benefits. Next slide. So the employer eligibility requirements have been very relaxed due to the executive order from the governor, because she would like to be able for many employers to be able to participate in this program to help them as well as help the state get reactivated. So as an employer, you need to have an active UI account number, be a liable as an employer. Employers must obtain approval of any applicable collective bargaining unit representative. And then the employer participating in WorkShare, you can't modify your employees' benefits that they're getting at this time. We would want you to keep them intact as long as you can while participating in WorkShare. So as an employee, we want to make sure that they have earned enough wages to meet the monetary eligibility requirements to establish a claim. So what a little bit with that is we're going to go back the last 4 of the 5 completed quarters, and we're going to determine if they're able to establish a claim. Part-time employees and new employees could be eligible provided they have wages in those past 4 or 5 completed quarters. And then the employees on UI must discontinue certifying previous claims while participating in WorkShare, because an employee cannot be paid on a PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment, WorkShare, and regular UI, because those are the 3 programs we got going on, plus the extensions. So it's one program. So as the employer gets ready to bring them back, you're going to be doing all the work, as we'll get ready to talk about as we go forward. Next slide, please. Advantages of WorkShare. So it can minimize or eliminate the need for total layoffs. Businesses can reduce employee work hours to reflect the decreases or the increases in business demand. It will enable a business to retain trained employees and avoid the expense of recruiting, hiring, and training new employees when business improves. It will save you money and keep your skilled talent workforce intact. It can be used in most any type of business or industry. The employees on their benefit side, they get to keep their benefits, fringe benefits, and then the employers are spared the hardship of full unemployment and receive more income than if they were fully laid off, because normally they would just get the regular UI without the FPUC right now, which is the extra $600. Next slide. So there's flexibility for employers. You can pick which employees they want to participate in a plan. You have to have at least 2 employees in a plan, and you can have multiple plans within your business. You have the flexibility to stop within a time frame of the approved application. And now you can reduce your hours and wages by as little as 10% and as much as 60%. It used to be 15 to 45. And now the employer will have to certify your employee weekly or biweekly, which is your choice. And an employer can bring back 10 employees with a 20% reduction in one WorkShare unit they create, and maybe 20 employees at a 50% reduction in a different WorkShare unit, which is all based on what your business needs. Next slide. So additional WorkShare flexibility. A WorkShare plan may approve for a period of up to 52 weeks, and it can be ended at any time without any penalty, and no one can be created whenever and a new one can be created whenever the employer's business needs require that. You will have to communicate with the employees about participating in a WorkShare program, and employees don't have the option to say, hey, I don't want to do that. I want to just stay on unemployment. That's not an option. So plans are submitted during the week. They are approved for the following Sunday. Right now, if we were to register for a plan, this week ends 5/23, and let's say I submitted a plan starting 5/17, that plan would be effective this week, 5/23. Next slide, please. Employees who work, employee exclusion. So employees who work more than 40 hours, not eligible. Employees cannot be seasonal, temporary, or intermittent employment. And work-share benefits are taxable income, but the deductions for this program are not subtracted from the weekly or biweekly certifications that the employer puts in. So at this time, it's just a program that we're going to pay that portion of the percent of reduced hours and the $600, but we won't be taking out taxes for this program. Next slide, please. How to apply for the Michigan Program Work-Share Program. So here's a video detailing how we can sign up today. We'll play the video. Okay, I can't hear that. Can anybody else hear it?
We may have to send this link along with the other video from earlier.
Okay, sorry guys. This is a very nice video. It shows you step by step on how to sign up for the Work-Share program through the MyWAM account. So sorry. All right, we'll move on to the next step, or next slide, I'm sorry. So for a certification, if you're familiar with our MyWAM account, inside your MyWAM, you would log in, click on the UI tax link under accounts. On the next page, you would click on under I want to, click register for Work-Share, submit the plan. And then if you had to file a certification, you come back into your Work-Share plan and you're gonna see where the red circle is. Click that link that says file certification. So for your employees to be paid, you'll need to certify them either weekly or biweekly and on the date you're to certify. Log into the MyWAM, click UI tax, click manage Work-Share, and then click the file certification link there. On the next page or next slide, please. So if we had to terminate a plan because business needs change, you know, an employee cannot have more than one active UI claim and must discontinue weekly or biweekly certifications on the week they return to work. So we really want our employer community to advise, be very assertive to the claims or the employees that if you have a week that you're entitled to regular unemployment or whatever program you might be on, make sure you certify for that week ending date. And then starting, let's just say, use this week, the week of 5/23, the employer will take over with the Work-Share certifications. Now, we do know we will have some people that will probably not understand, let's just say, and they may go certify. So when you get ready to certify, it may have a little hiccup on the program that they get paid on. So that means that we may have to do some work on our insides. But we hope that everybody will listen to you as you get ready to talk about Work-Share. And we just ask that they don't certify past the regular weekend that they really need. All right, next slide, please. Work-Share and the Paycheck Protection Program. So keep in mind, employers that are part of the PPP can still participate in Work-Share, but the program does need when the Paycheck Protection Program is forgiveness of loans. So we want you to make sure you read that, you know, whatever their guidelines are for the PPP program. So the Paycheck Protection Program recipients should review your applications as you get ready to structure your Work-Share plans. Next slide. The forgiveness requirements include 75% of the PPP loan must be used for payroll costs to the eligible for forgiveness. Loan forgiveness will be reduced if salaries and decreased salaries and wages by more than 25% of an employee that has made less than $100,000 annualized in 2019. And the employers have up until June 30th of 2020 to restore full-time employment and salaries for any changes that took place between February 15th and April 26th. Next slide. So here's an example. Let's say we have a manufacturer that's considering restarting their business. They know they'll experience a loss of revenue for the next 12 weeks, but still want to reopen operations. They have 100 employees, and prior to all this, they were all laid off to COVID-19. So now the employer wants to bring them back, but only at a 70% capacity. So they would put each employee in a work share plan with a 30% reduction. So when we talk about hours, we talk about what do you consider full-time, whether it's full-time hours or part-time hours, and you would have to calculate that by the reduction to to determine the hours that they will be reduced. Next slide, please. So restarting a business, let's assume that each employee under normal operations, they earn $1,000 a week. Under WorkShare, each employee is retained to work at least 30% reduction in wages and hours. So their salary would then be $700 a week, 30% of their state unemployment benefits, plus they'd get the extra $600 for the federal benefit. So under WorkShare, these employees would make more than $1,400 a week versus only $962 on unemployment. So employee weekly salary through June 2020 says they would have gotten $1,408 with WorkShare, and if they had collected regular unemployment, they would have only received $962. Next slide. So WorkShare has been expanded under the Federal CARES Act and our governor's executive orders. We have an employee hours wages can now be reduced as little as 10% or as high as 60%. The length of time required that employers must be in business has been waived. Employers don't have to be in current on their unemployment taxes. Employers are not required to have a positive balance in their unemployment tax account. Regular part-time employees are now eligible, and participants will receive a percentage of the Michigan benefits plus the $600 federal pandemic unemployment compensation weekly through the week ending July 25th. WorkShare is 100% federally funded through December 26th of 2020, and employers' quarterly tax rate and reserve balance remains intact, which means we're not going to deduct anything, the offset, or charge you for any of these WorkShare benefits that are being issued out to your employees. It's all being taken care of under the Federal CARES Act. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, WorkShare is a great option for employers who need to bring back the employees at a reduced capacity. It allows the company to re-engage their workforce and ramp up their business at a schedule that works best for them. It uses additional money from the CARES Act to serve as a great incentive for workers to return from total unemployment and get back to work for us to restart Michigan. This says conclusion. So I say we will take questions if we have some. Oh, we have the employer FAQs. So if an employer chooses WorkShare, must he or she use it for their entire business? So the answer for that is no. A WorkShare plan can apply to a department, a shift, or another organizational unit. Employers may have more than one WorkShare plan. Can I lay off some of the workers participating in a WorkShare plan and continue with the plan with the remaining individuals? That answer is no, because that is a requirement. You cannot lay off any employees in a WorkShare plan during the duration of the plan. Next slide, please. Not every employee with the affected unit is a union member. Can the unit still be approved for a WorkShare plan? That is correct, they can, yes. Can the union representative request a modification or termination of a WorkShare plan? No, the union cannot unilaterally modify or terminate a WorkShare plan. Next slide. What do I do if an employer has been approved for WorkShare? So this is an employee asking the question, what do I do if my employer has been approved for WorkShare? Your employer will provide you with information regarding participation in a WorkShare program. The employee will receive a letter form called the UIA 1054, which is called the Notice to Work for the Workshare Program from the State of Michigan Unemployment Agency, explaining their weekly benefit amount while participating in Workshare, their weeks of eligibility, and your employer Workshare when it begins and when it ends. The letter will provide the instructions on the method of payment. They don't need to contact the office to file for weekly Workshare benefits because that is taken care of by the employer. Next slide, please. So another employee question, when will I receive my Workshare amount? So after the UIA notifies of their eligibility for Workshare, the employer will submit all information on their behalf. If they have any questions regarding Workshare, they should contact the employer if they have those particular questions. And the employee asks, how will I receive my weekly share amount? So payments are issued by default if they do not have a payment method on record by the Bank of America debit card. The employee would have the option to update their payment method once they receive the UIA 1054. So in order for them to do that, they want to wait till they get the paperwork in their hand. That way the system recognizes that they're an active claim in the system. They can also then go call the 866-500-0017. They would select 1 for English and then select option 2 for update payment option. Now we recognize that our phones are quite heavy right now. We would just encourage them if they truly wanted to update that they would wait and try to do, after hours, Saturday, Sunday, but they really want to wait till they get the letter, the UIA 1054. So they want to make sure that they have the accurate financial institution routing number and their account number when they get ready to call the claimant customer service line to populate that information into our system. So if no option is selected, then their automated method of payment would be the debit card. So again, if they've had a previous claim and it had already a method on record, then it will stay the same, will not change it, and they won't have to either. Next slide, please. So the employee asks and says, I forgot my personal identification PIN. Can you help me? Well, at this point, we're going to want to guide them to the 866-500-0017 and listen to the prompt so they can press that option to speak to a representative for that kind of assistance. The next question asks, can I protest my Workshare claim or benefit amount? So they're going to receive the UIA 1054 notice to employees of Workshare plan, and they can't protest that form. It's not a protestable document. The employer is the one that handles the entire Workshare process, including application, participation list, and the work reduction percentage resulting in the payment of the Workshare benefits. Next slide, please. Another employee question. I was receiving a standard UI claim. Then I was recalled back to work and told that my employer was having me participate in the Workshare. Do I continue to certify my standard UI claim? This is where we want the employer to be very, it is imperative that while you are participating in work, do not certify your previous standard claim. So while the Workshare plan is in effect, the employer is responsible for certifying for their benefits for Workshare. They are not required, you are not to receive benefits under a standard claim and a Workshare claim because it will not allow 2 programs to be paid. And if it does, then they would be committing fraud if they certify their standard claim while they're receiving benefits for participating in the Workshare program. So we strongly encourage them only to collect the last week that if they were on a regular layoff and now they're getting ready to come back, we only want them to call the Marvin or file online for the last week that they need. Next slide, please. Another employee question. Can I work for another employer while participating in my employer's Workshare plan? You can, yes. However, if you have other employment and work more hours in your other employment than you're reduced by the work-share employer, it's possible that the weekly UI benefit amount would be effective. So they give the example, if you're reduced 10 hours with the work-share employer and you work 12 hours with a different employer, you won't receive benefits for that week. And that employee should report that to the employer, the work-share employer, so the employer knows if they should certify them or not. It's strongly encouraged that we let them know that, because we do participate in cross-matching. So if we do audits, and as we probably will, and they come up and they didn't report, you know, they may have to pay back weeks that they weren't entitled to. So we try our best to encourage, make sure they let you know. Next slide, please. So if you want to learn more about our WorkShare, we have a very nice updated Michigan.gov WorkShare webpage that's on our public webpage. It's very nice. It has all our latest guides on there. It has this presentation on there. We also have an email address there, uia-workshare@michigan.gov. We are in the process to getting those emails responded to within the 24-hour time frame. Or you may contact us at the Office of Employer Ombudsman, or we also have a WorkShare line. So we have several ways for you to get additional resources, as well to get back with us if you have additional questions. And we're ready for the next slide, or is it time for questions? Oh, these are our different resources that we have. We have a toolkit. We have our fact sheet, the 156. We also have a nice brochure, and we do have the employee guide sheet. It is on our WorkShare page. So if you needed to print any of those materials and hand them out to your employees, you are certainly welcome to do so. Anybody have additional questions?
Well, great. Thank you, Carrie. We are capturing all the questions, and I'm going to let Aaron speak, and then we'll take them all at the end as they're coming in right now. And I know Deneen is still on the line as well to be able to answer questions. I want to really thank you for your presentation. I know your departments have so much going on and an incredible workload. So taking the time to help us and our businesses better understand this program, it's one that we're marketing to our businesses as a great way to help ramp up their employees and you know, financially use their resources wisely as possible. So we do also have all of those, your toolkit, your brochure, everything linked on our webpage as well. And we will send all of that out to everybody, but just trying to make sure we get it in everybody's hands for them to consider if this is right for them. So thank you again, Carrie.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you all for listening.
All right, next we welcome Aaron Gundrum. Aaron is an industrial hygienist with the Consultation Education and Training Division of Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or MIOSHA. I don't think that title fits on a business card, Aaron, but I made it through. Aaron currently provides consultation and training services for the Upper Peninsula and Northern Lower Counties of Michigan. Over the past 5 years, Aaron was the Senior Safety Compliance Officer with MIOSHA General Industry Division. Before working with the state of Michigan, he was the Corporate Health and Safety Director at a global paper manufacturing corporation. Aaron has worked with various health and safety roles within multiple business sectors over the past 25 years, including petrochemical, pharmaceutical, and automotive industries. Over the course of his career, he has been responsible for regulatory health and safety management, organizational health and safety training, and operational business excellence. He is a graduate of Michigan Technological University with a Bachelor's of Science degree in Environmental Engineering and a Master's of Science degree in Industrial Health from U of M. Today, Aaron will be touching on our preparedness and response plans that are required by the Executive Order 91. So I really appreciate your being here as well, Aaron. This is another area we think is really important to make sure we have in the hands of all of our businesses. So we are all complying, as the UP, as you know, is reopening as of today in a lot of areas. So thank you for being here, and I will turn it over to you.
Very good. Thank you, Amy. I appreciate the introduction, and and I look forward to this presentation. So for the group today, as Amy had mentioned, this is going to be a review of the COVID-19 guidelines that have been developed by MIOSHA in respect to controlling the exposure or limiting this. So it's really in respect to the executive orders that have been dictated by our governor and included in this presentation. So a copy of this presentation and others that I'll allude to are on our MIOSHA website. I'll share with everybody a link to that during the course of this process. Next slide. During today's presentation, we'll cover several objectives, looking at an overview of the COVID-19 and the general workplace requirements, and what are the workplace requirements for all businesses through the state of Michigan. We're going to take a look at some of the MIOSHA workplace rules that are applicable in this environment. And as Amy had mentioned, with developing a preparedness and response plan that the executive order has outlined, we'll touch base on the components that need to be built into that platform and where you can find example templates available on our website as well. And as we finish kind of reviewing the general workplace requirements, we're going to do a little deeper dive on some of the industry specific requirements, specifically today with restaurants and bars as they begin the reopening process itself. And then finally, we'll share some of the resources that I provide in this presentation, as well as resources for our industries as they begin opening up. Next slide, please. I will note that the information in this PowerPoint is ever evolving as executive orders are out and shared with the state of Michigan. We are trying to update our slides and our presentation material. So based off of Executive Order 2029, it was done earlier in the week. And if you are reviewing these PowerPoints online, you'll see that we are trying to update them as new executive orders are outlined. In addition, we've included in this presentation agency material from OSHA and reference guidance from the CDC has been integrated into this process. Next slide, please. So what I'm sharing with you here is actually a screenshot of our MIOSHA website. This has been updated recently. We've had a COVID-19 website for some time, but we now have specific PowerPoint training consistent to both general industry and construction. And with the onset of Executive Order 91, the governor has outlined requirements for other specific industries coming in line, specifically around manufacturing, offices, research laboratories, retail, and restaurants and bars. And so if you are able to click on each one of these, and we'll provide a link at the end, they'll give you the presentation not only that we're sharing today, but presentation material that may be specific to your specific industry. Along that line, MIOSHA has developed a workplace safety and health hotline for any employers or employees having questions regards to COVID-19 in the workplace, or how to prepare that emergency response plan itself. That we have people on staff that can answer those questions throughout the state. And that is a new number in the state of Michigan. It's listed as 1-855-723-3219. And we'll share that number again at the end, but it's a great reference link to utilize when you have these type of questions. Next slide, please. So we're going to first take a look at the general workplace requirements. And once again, these are requirements for all businesses that are reopening. And there's 12 major components that are defined within the current executive order. I'm just going to briefly touch base on each one of these and elaborate on them in the next few slides. The first component around developing a preparedness and response plan for COVID-19 for all employers. We'll share a template of what that may look like and available resources for that. Another component defined within the executive order was to designate a COVID-19 site supervisor and how that looks within an industry. We'll touch base on social screening protocols and how we try or recommend that we maintain at least a 6-foot social distancing during this epidemic itself. We're going to touch base and look at what type of personal protective equipment, specifically around non-medical face coverings, is required in the executive order and what's applicable to industry-specific standards as well. We're going to touch base and look at some of the cleaning and disinfection protocols and where they're available, and notifications that are required if confirmed cases do exist. So the governor's executive order does outline continuing to restrict non-essential business travel and promote remote work where possible. So we'll touch base on those components. And then finally, once again, encouraging the use of PPE and hand sanitizers and adopting necessary controls where necessary. Next slide, please. So let's take a deeper look at the preparedness and response plan for COVID-19. There are specific elements that have been outlined by the governor's executive order. This is a response plan that needs to be developed by all businesses with in-person work. This is to be developed by June 1st or within 2 weeks of resuming in-person activities. So not all facilities are online, but as they come online, they need to have a plan in place. This plan does not have to be submitted to MIOSHA or LEO, but it does need to be made available to employees, labor unions, and customers if needed. There's multiple ways to do that. You can have that available via your website, internal network, or hard copies, but it does not have to be submitted to Lansing at this time. In the upcoming slides, I'll refer to some of the example templates we have that can help you develop a industry or site-specific document. So in this preparation plan, it's going to cover several components that will expand upon, from assessing the level of exposure for employees at work all the way to defining policies and procedures and how you identify or isolate employees if they do contract COVID-19. Next slide, please. The picture that you're looking at now is actually a suggested format of what that preparedness and response plan can look like for your facility for low and medium risk employees, which is the vast majority of the facilities that are beginning the reopening phase at this point. This is a template that outlines the various job tasks and positions that you may have, and it's based on the risks associated with those tasks. And it will outline various controls that you may want to incorporate into your facility. So it's a really nice base template that you can utilize. It's very similar to a lot of our other base templates like respiratory protection or personal protective assessments. This is something that you can use, or you can develop one yourself, but it's a great guide to go off of. And once again, if you have questions as you begin developing this or rolling it out to your employees, don't hesitate to call at MIOSHA Workplace Safety and Health Hotline if you have any questions. Next slide, please. Several other components that were defined within the governor's executive order. We'll touch base on several of those key pieces. Employers are required to designate one or more worksite supervisors to implement, monitor, or report on the COVID-19 control strategies. The supervisor must remain on site at all times when employees are present on site. But the executive order does state that an on-site employee may be designated to perform the supervisory role. So that's been a change going forward. Employers are still to conduct a daily entry screening protocol for employees and contractors entering the workforce. And at a minimum, a questionnaire covering the signs and symptoms of COVID-19 should be part of that screening process. Employers, as we alluded to before, are still asked to keep the distance of 6 feet from one another to the extent possible. That's not always possible. We'll go through precautions that can be put in place for that. But they're recommending using such things as ground markings, signs, physical barriers as appropriate to each of the different work sites. Employers are to make cleaning supplies available to employees and provide the time necessary to wash your hands frequently or use hand sanitizer to help stop the spread of COVID-19. And as we alluded to earlier, the governor is requesting that we continue to restrict business travel for employees to essential travel only and promote work remotely if at all possible. And for those that do need to travel, encourage them to use personal protective equipment and hand sanitizers on public transportation. Next slide, please. Several other components that were defined in the executive order focus on the cleaning and disinfection protocols, as well as the notification process itself. All businesses must increase their facility cleaning and disinfection to limit the exposure to COVID-19, especially high-touch surfaces, workstations, paying especially attention to parts or products or shared equipment from employers and employees. Employers are also to adopt protocols to clean and disinfect the facility in the event of a positive COVID-19 case in the workplace. Those are all parts that should be built within your plan itself. And if an employee is identified with a confirmed case of COVID-19, within 24 hours, the employers must notify both the local health department and any coworkers, contractors, or suppliers who may have come in contact with a person with a confirmed case of COVID-19. Next slide, please. The executive order does reference the use of non-medical grade face coverings for employees as a requirement. So if employees are required to work within a distance of 6 feet of each other, it's mandated that you wear non-medical face coverings. If there are times where you are going to be 3 feet or less, it's recommended that you wear not only the non-medical face covering, but a face shield as well to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. And just like any other personal protective equipment that you provide for your employees, employees need to be trained on that proper wear, use, and maintenance of that type of protection. Next slide. So within the general workplace requirements, there are specifically 4 minimum requirements for training of all employees. The first being that workplace infection control practices need to be shared with employees and part of the original emergency plan itself. The use of personal protective equipment, as we just alluded to, needs to be trained on. And then employees need to know the steps to notify a business or operation of any symptoms of COVID-19 during the course of working. And then if there are any unsafe working conditions, employees need to know what is that reporting process to get that corrected. Next slide. The current executive order is asking that workplaces, from a general perspective, continue to look at the tasks that are being performed. That may vary on a day-to-day basis at some locations, and also looking at the rate of infection within the community, and if there are things that you have to do as far as going maybe even above and beyond what the executive orders are, utilizing the resources from CDC, OSHA, and MINOSHA to help prevent that from spreading itself. Next slide, please. Over the next couple of slides, I'll talk about different reference material that's available. This is actually a general workplace poster that's available on the OSHA website. A lot of employers are posting this document. It's a good reference material to remind employees about making sure that they frequently wash their hands, how to use hand sanitizer, and avoiding the touching of eyes, nose, and mouth. So it's not a requirement that you have this poster, but it's typically utilized as part of the training, and it's definitely something that you could post within your environment. Next slide, please. So over the past several slides, I was speaking to general workplace requirements for all businesses. And as I alluded to earlier, there are several industry-specific components, and one of those being around restaurants and bars. So what I wanted to do was just review the specific requirements for restaurants and bars that have been detailed in the executive order. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The document in front of you is actually a nice tool that's been developed by the CDC. This tool is utilized to assist businesses in the food service industry in helping determine, am I ready to open? What do I have in place? And so it's just a quick tool sheet that you can utilize to determine, are my plans developed? Are my employees trained? Do I know the specific requirements and have they been implemented? And it's something that employers can utilize. It's a good recommendation coming from the CDC. I have a link to this on the later end of my slide deck as well for you to reference. Next slide, please. OSHA also has a nice fact sheet specific to restaurants and beverage vendors, those that are offering takeout or curbside pickup. There's several key notes that you could consider as you're developing your plan and rolling this out. But these OSHA alerts and CDC fact sheets are available online and can be printed by anybody. Next slide. Now let's touch base specifically on the restaurants and bars, the executive order requirements. We'll read through a few of these items in detail. The first being that restaurants and bars are to limit their capacity of 50% or normal seating as defined in the order. Also requiring 6 feet of separation between parties or groups at different tables or bar tops. The executive order also states that you should close waiting areas and ask customers to wait in cars for a call when their table is ready, and to close the self-serve food or drink options, such as buffets or salad bars and drink stations during this time period. Next slide, please. There are several communication requirements built within the governor's executive order. The first stating that employers should create communications material for customers. And that can be done in the form of signs or pamphlets or some other media to inform them of the changes to your restaurant or bar practices and explain the precautions that are being taken to prevent infection. Employers are also being asked to post signs at store entrances informing customers not to enter if they are sick or recently been sick. And then finally, posting signs instructing customers should wear face coverings until they get to their table. Next slide, please. So I know we touched briefly about face coverings from a general workplace requirement. It is also a requirement when it comes to restaurants and bar reopenings. Within the executive order, it states that employees are to wear face coverings and gloves in the kitchen area when handling food and being consistent with the guidelines of FDA as well. Hosts and servers are to wear face coverings in the dining area. And once again, just like our normal personal protective equipment, employees should be trained on the proper wear, use, and maintenance of those coverings and gloves if they're being utilized. Next slide, please. With restaurants and bars reopening, there is additional employee training above and beyond what the general workplace guidelines had stated. We had mentioned the use of personal protective equipment and what's applicable there. Also, the food safety health protocols, specifically when items are being cleaned between customers, especially things like condiments or menus or items that are shared between customers. And once again, how to manage, your employees should be trained on how to manage symptomatic customers upon entry or in the restaurant, and something you can define within your plan. Next slide, please. So there are several notifications that are built as requirements within the governor's executive order as well. Now, if it's known that an employee or customer or supplier has a confirmed case of COVID-19, employers must notify employees. Employers are also asked to close the restaurant immediately if an employee shows multiple symptoms of COVID-19, such as a fever, could be atypical shortness of breath or a typical cough. You have multiple symptoms, to perform a deep, clean, consistent guidance with the FDA and the CDC. And one note that it states within the executive order is that this cleaning may occur overnight. And finally, if an employee has a confirmed case of COVID-19, the employer must require a doctor's return release to return to work. Next slide, please. One of the best mechanisms to prevent COVID-19 from spreading is to utilize workplace controls. The governor's executive order outlines 4 key areas, and we'll walk through each one of these pieces. The first being around installing physical barriers, items such as sneeze guards and partitions at cash registers, hose stands, or any area where maintaining physical distance of 6 feet is difficult. To the maximum extent possible, employers are to limit the number of employees in shared spaces, specifically kitchens, break rooms, offices, and maintain at least 6-foot distance between employees. Employers are also required to provide physical guides, things such as tape on floors or sidewalks and signage on walls, to ensure that customers remain at least 6 feet apart in any lines. And then finally, employers are to limit the shared items for customers. We talked about menus and condiments, but along that line, also clean those high contact areas after each customer utilizes those. And that could be tables, chairs, payment systems, anything that's applicable to your specific industry. Next slide, please. So what we're asking each of the groups and the businesses through the state of Michigan is try to stay updated as much as you can. As things are updated through the CDC or OSHA regulatory agency or MyOSHA site itself, we are trying to update our material of reference and media. So as those change, you should be able to either ask those questions or get the material as it's updated on the various executive orders throughout the state of Michigan. Next slide, please. And finally, the last 2 slides here are really reviewing the resources that we have available. I know there was multiple internet links and resources that I described in our PowerPoint here. If you go to this PowerPoint on our MyOSHA website, right to those locations and the MyOSHA resources that are available specific to the restaurants and bars, as well as the MyOSHA resources. Next slide. And finally, for those facilities that are not bars or restaurants, looking for additional information or resources, we have a general COVID-19 resource link that walks you through various systems and plans in place so that you can help bring good best practices within your facility and be in compliance. And final slide. Once again, there have been many questions associated with COVID-19 and the response. How do we develop our plans and our training associated with it? And I just want to recommend once again for employers and employees to call MyOSHA's Workplace Safety and Health Hotline that's specifically designated for these type of questions. And hopefully we can help you come in compliance and share those best practices, incorporate them into your facilities. So with that, that will conclude my presentation, and I thank you all for viewing this training.
Great. Thank you, Aaron, so much. I realize there's a lot contained in here, and we're all learning. So while it seems somewhat overwhelming, I do know the resources that you've put up, and we've linked to all of them on our website, marquette.org, as well, to try and make it as easy to navigate as possible for the businesses. I do have some questions I'm going to get started on. Again, if you have any others, put them in the question pane and we'll get to them. If we don't get to all of them, we will get them answered and send them out just to make sure that you're getting what you need out of today. But I will start with one thing I want to just reiterate with Aaron, because I know there was some confusion last week that the preparedness and response plans, at one point there was the discussion that they needed to be filed at the state, filed at Leo, and then the answer, though, just to confirm, is no. They are to be given to the employees labor unions and on site, correct?
That is correct. It's a great question. Originally, the governor had stated in one of her conference calls that that plan should be submitted to Leo. It was reiterated in the executive order that that plan itself needs to be created by businesses by June 1st or 2 weeks prior to them reopening, but it does not need to be resubmitted or submitted to Leo itself or MIOSHA. It's something that they need to have available and share with their employees and contractors and anybody pertinent to that facility.
Okay, great. That's helpful. I just wanted to make sure we're all on the same page moving forward. Next question, it looks like this is for you too, Erin. Why are employers who have remained open, not just re-engaging, required to take temperatures? It puts us at a greater risk having to take temperatures, and having your temperature taken is not.
Yeah, so the temperature and screening protocols were developed by the CDC and are utilized throughout the country itself. So that part that was defined has been recognized by OSHA as being one of the practices to continue to adopt. Now, that may change at some point within the executive orders, but in the interim at this point, it's still required.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see, Carrie, question for you. What is the effective date of the WorkShare program? We did not close, but had a reduction in hours 2 months. Carrie or Deneen?
Hi,
Can
can you hear me?
Oh,
Are you
there we
there,
go.
Carrie?
Sorry. I can hear
Can you
you.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the effective date of the WorkShare program in regards to the executive orders from the governor in regards to the eligibility requirements and the expanded benefits, that happened in her executive order, and that dates back all the way to March, I believe, 15th of 2020. However, your effective date and participation in a WorkShare plan would start on the date that you indicated on your plan application. So let's say that you had those persons working 2 months ago at a reduced percentage rate of work hours, but you did not submit a WorkShare plan application at that time. Well, we cannot backdate that. Yes, you were denied based upon one of the eligibility requirements that were waived for the WorkShare. So if you submitted a plan application back in March, then we can go backdate it. But if you did not, and you're starting your WorkShare plan application now, we cannot backdate it. I hope that helps.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question for you, Carrie. When salons are able to be open, hours will be more than likely less due to the social distancing requirement. Is this something our business could utilize in this situation?
The answer is yes.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
That's all right, Deneen, go ahead.
So it's based on the percentage of work reduction of work hours. So if your employees had worked previously to the COVID pandemic at 40 hours, and now you bring them back and working, and you note that your business demand has decreased by 30%, well then yes, they can you can apply for a WorkShare plan at a 30% reduction, which means that they're based upon their 40 hours a week reduction, they would have approximately 28 hours in which they would receive earnings from the employer, and then the rest would be made up by the unemployment reduced benefits.
Great, thank you. Also on WorkShare, how long can a WorkShare plan last? Is there a minimum number of weeks?
Well, 1 week is a minimum week, and it can last all the way up for 52 weeks is the highest amount of weeks.
Oh, great. That's an easy one. 1 to 52.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Aaron, so there's a question on the supervisory role in the preparedness plan. If you're a small office of 4 or 5 people, it's hard to have someone there at all times. Is there any workaround for that?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that's a challenge for a lot of businesses that we work with. So the executive order states that there has to be a supervisor in charge of kind of coordinating these COVID-19 components, but it also does state that an employee can be designated to do that. So you may have somebody that's a backup or even a backup to that person that is normally an hourly employee working on other various tasks that could be utilized to continue that effort versus always having that first line supervisor available. That may not always be an option.
Okay, good. That's helpful. A lot of small business here and office settings that are working through this as well. Let's see, Carrie or Deneen, can an employer choose to do work share over any union's objections?
So the work share employer, if they have union employees, would have to get a written authorization of agreement that those union employees can participate in a work share plan from their union collective bargaining representative.
Okay, that's very helpful. Okay, so here's a lengthy one. Let's see if I can capture the essence here. If an employee in a 20% reduction group, say 32 hours instead of 40, works less than those 32 hours due to weather issues for this person's business, do I pay them the hours worked or must I pay them for 32 hours? The employee would be working all available hours.
Okay, so this is, so the employee has to work the hours in which the employer indicated that they had the work share reduction. So, and when I say work, that means that if the employer is paying the employee for those hours in which they were off, let's say if it was either a vacation day or sick day or like a PPO day, those hours would still count towards the employer's required amount of hours in order to participate in a work share program. So, but let's say that the employee was not paid by the employer for those hours. Therefore, the employee was not, could not be certified for that week.
Okay, thank you. Another question, can employees still reduce hours and not participate in the work share program? Do employees still receive unemployment if their hours have to be reduced on a week-to-week basis? And would they still receive the extra $600?
All right, so that's the difference between an employee being on work share and an employee being on a standard UI claim with a standard UI claim with a reduced amount of hours on layoff. So the difference is if that employee was on the reduced amount of hours on standard claim, then the employer would have to then pay that employee for a certain amount of hours that week. So when the employee went to go certify for their standard claim for that week, indicate on that certification that they had earnings from that employer, and they would have to report the dollar amount of those earnings. Now, in the computation in regards to how much UI benefits you were going to get on the standard claim, we would take into consideration the earnings that you had from your employer. And if your earnings were more than 1.5 times of your standard UI claim, then you would be denied that UI benefit for that week, as well as the FPUF money, which is the $600. Now, conversely, if that employee was on the same amount of reduced work hours on the WorkShare plan, they would actually receive a portion of a UI benefit and the $600 in FPUF money. And the reason why, and the difference between the WorkShare reduction and a standard UI claim in regards to a reduced work hours layoff is that 1.5 requirement eligibility in the standard claim is not applicable in a WorkShare claim.
Thank
Hope
you.
you followed it.
A lot
You're
of
welcome.
nuances there for sure. Erin, a question, obviously in the plans and what we have to provide as employers, PPE, hand sanitizer, the like, we know that they're difficult to source right now. So what happens if you can't find them or can't keep them in stock and MIOSHA comes to do a check or whatever happens? Is there going to be any, I don't want to say leniency, but is there any understanding of the fact that a lot of those products are difficult to get, and once everybody starts reopening, I imagine they'll be even more difficult?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a challenge that many businesses have been working through over the last several months. Supplies are becoming more and more available. I talk to several hundred employees and employers every week, so it's good that they're progressing in that direction. But there are times where PPE, things like N95 dust masks or other supplies are difficult to get. And what's developed is actually through the CDC has options on what you do if you can't find N95 dust masks. What are your options as far as different types of supplies that you might utilize or even reuse in some cases itself? So what the OSHA and MIOSHA has developed is what's called interim guidance documents for compliance officers. And over the last several weeks, they were supposed to look at employers to ensure that they're providing a good faith effort to comply with these guidelines themselves. Now, these guidelines from the executive order are enforceable. So information that I shared today from the executive order these are things that employers have to do. But once again, showing the good faith efforts that documenting that you've tried to purchase this product or you're working to get this type of cleaning material, continue to utilize those resources as much as you can, but the good faith efforts are really a critical part of that.
That's great to hear. Thank you for that. Because I truly believe, I mean, all the businesses and employers, they want to do the right thing. It's just, we're learning it all and it's all new to everybody. And so appreciate the good faith effort comments. Let's see. Another question on WorkShare. Can each bargaining unit make their own decision to enter into the program if they are in the same department, or is it an all or nothing?
So the employer would have to get approval from the applicable bargaining unit representative. So if there's multiple unions, then they would have to get written approval from the appropriate bargaining unit representative.
But it could be that not both, so there's two bargaining units in the same department and only one is going to take advantage of it, the other chooses not to, that can still work?
Yep. Yeah.
Perfect. Great.
Mm-hmm.
With the CARES Act extra $600, how do employers dispute claims if the plant was scheduled to be closed for a weekend, but the employees called in so they could have a longer weekend and still try to collect unemployment?
All right, so that's two different situations. So in a WorkShare plan, the employee does not certify their claim. On WorkShare, it's an employer-based program. So the employer would have to certify for that employee. So if that person was on a WorkShare program and that employee did not show up for work, then that employee did not work the appropriate amount of hours in which they're supposed to do in agreement with that WorkShare plan. Therefore, the employee the employer would not certify that employee for benefits for that week.
Okay, so that's the big difference, employer-driven versus employee-driven on the certification.
Exactly.
That's great to note. Let's see, I'm going to combine these two questions here. What if an employer does not have a UI account, and how does this work for self-employed people?
It doesn't work for self-employed people. The eligibility requirement for an employer to participate in a WorkShare program is that they have an active UI account number and they be a liable employer. If you do not have an active UI account number, then you cannot participate.
Thank you. Couple more questions here. Let's see. Okay, I think we answered the one about the 2 unions in the same department. Does it have to be 100% union approval or just a majority?
I don't know what you mean by 100% union. So I think that's kind of like the same question. So if you have multiple unions, if your employees are represented by multiple unions and you want to put all those employees on one plan, but one union did not provide you with written consent that their members could participate in a WorkShare plan, then those union members cannot participate in a WorkShare plan.
Okay, and just in case, this also means if they have to provide a letter, I'm not sure how that works on the bargaining side, unit side, but it wouldn't, if they had to go to a vote of the union to authorize that, it wouldn't have, it could be a majority, not unanimous, if that's the way they're asking the question.
That's completely up to the employer, the employee, and the union. Our just requirements get a letter of approval.
Okay, great. Let's see.
So, conversely, to note on that in regards to the union, so if you if your union agreed to the WorkShare program, and let's say after 2 weeks they said, hey, we don't want our members on a union on this anymore, the union cannot call UIA and tell us, hey, take my union members off of this WorkShare plan. But again, this is an employer-based program. The union would have to deal with the employer to indicate that they are participating. So the union cannot terminate the plan that the employer and UIA have, nor can a employee who you have signed up on the plan call us up and say, well, I don't want to participate in the plan, so I need to terminate the plan. They can't do that. It's an employer-based program, so it's up to the employer to get approval and to terminate the plan, not the union and not the employee.
Okay. This is a follow-up to the UI account. If an employer doesn't have an active UI account, can the employee apply if their hours have been reduced?
No, because you would have to have an active UI account in order to establish a claim. So, and you as the employer, we can't hold you liable or do you a compliance review because once again, this is an employer-based program. The employer completes the application. The employer is the one who's attesting that the information that they provide to us on their approved WorkShare plan is true and factual. If you are not an employer with the Unemployment Insurance Agency because you have never filed quarterly reports, then, or have a UI number, then that employee who works for you cannot be on a WorkShare plan because it's not an employee signed up program. It's an employer program.
Right. Once more reinforcing the employer-driven versus the employee-driven programs. I have. Let's see, I have one last question here, and Erin, it's about the response plans. Is this a one and done type plan, or are there requirements to have it updated on a regular basis?
At this point, the requirement from the executive order is to have a plan. And just like anything else, if job positions or duties or risks change within your work environment, then your plan should be updated. So it's just like a working plan, whether that's personal protective equipment or respiratory protection, it'd be very similar where if changes in your environment change, that should be updated as well. So using that as a living document. Okay. If there are any other executive orders that come that mandate certain components of it, we will share that and update our template. That hasn't happened at this point yet. So right now, using that base document that we have defined on our MyOSHA website will get you started, and then you make it site-specific based on your jobs and tasks.
Great, thank you. And I'm not seeing any other questions. So just a couple of housekeeping to wrap up here. We will have the Workshare slides and links and the response plan links and everything on our website as well, so that you can have the information that was presented today. Continue to check back on our website at marquette.org. These are all the things that we're tracking as well. These were great presentations today with great information that we will continue to load up on our site too. I want to thank Carrie, Deneen, and Aaron so very much for being able to take the time on a Friday right before the holiday weekend. And I know we did a quick turnaround time getting you guys here with the surprise reopening of the UP. So I am grateful for your time. For all those that have attended, you know where to find your business representatives at the Lake Superior Community Partnership if you need anything as we start these next phases. So happy to have you on the call today. We did, of course, launch our Love on Local gift card program to support our local businesses and in particular our small businesses. And the timing of that worked perfect for some of the reopening that we're starting to see this weekend. So also on marquette.org, you're able to log on and order cards and start spending money at the local establishments that are starting to re-engage. Lastly, everybody have a great Memorial Day weekend. I don't know about where everybody is on the call, but it's supposed to be pretty sunny here, and we'll take it in the UP for sure. And so thank you again and enjoy.